Ready? 3, 2, 1, clock is running. Come on!
Saw 3 of my teammates break necks, all of which actually recovered and came back to the sport. But those are some pretty scary things to watch. And after many years of a career, you just see so many of those, you're kind of like, maybe I should pack it in now. So I did freestyle skiing aerials. So basically ski into a jump at like 65, 70 kilometers an hour. It's a 4-meter tall jump at about 70 degrees at the top, go off, do a couple flips, try to land on your feet, basically.
Very casual description.
Yeah.
Is the sport considered dangerous?
The crane.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I think aerials is a pretty dangerous sport. I mean, once I couldn't remember who my roommate was. Like I passed all the questions. They're like, what day is it? What's this? And I'm like, yes, I'm killing this. I didn't get a concussion. And then they're like, who are you rooming with this week? And I was like, I have no idea. And then they're like, yep, you have a concussion. You're done. So I grew up playing like a ton of video games when I was super young. And then funny enough, when I got onto the ski team, video games also became a pretty big part of my life because we were on the road so much and you're just like stranded at the top of some mountain at the hotel, like nothing else up there. And a couple of us had Game Boys and we managed to get a link cable and we'd play head-to-head Tetris. We'd play head-to-head to see who had to do the dishes after dinner and stuff like that.
Kyle's gonna get me in the moment of defeat.
We also had times where we'd be traveling in the van and a couple of us would be playing Tetris and we'd be screaming and shouting and the rest of the van was just getting so upset because we wouldn't shut up until they got looped in and then they would be screaming and shouting just as bad. So we kind of went through the whole Game Boy, Game Boy Advance, Game Boy SP, through all of those different hardware iterations. The classic. By the time I was 15 or 16, I was spending a lot of time on the road already. I got on the World Cup team when I was 19. I did a couple World Cups when I was 18. I actually won my 3rd World Cup ever, and that got me a spot on the team for the next season. So that was kind of when I started traveling with internationally a lot and spending way more time on the road. When I was 19, I went to university and did a year of computer science and pretty much promptly dropped out. You'd be home for a week and go to classes and then you'd be off competing the next week and you'd miss a whole 2 weeks of classes and you'd have to try to make it up and it just, yeah.
It's probably hard to think about math when you're about to
yeah. Yeah. That was kind of the timing when the first gen Xbox was kind of rolling out. And that was when we got introduced to Halo and some of those games. We even got to the point where we set up cardboard dividers on our old CRT screen because we didn't want a screen peek and everything because we got too competitive. Sometimes the gaming decided who got the bad bed or who had to, carry the extra luggage. And we actually had one of our sports psychologists basically having us visualize and do mental training while hooked up to basically a brainwave monitor. And then one day we actually convinced the researcher to hook us up and let us play Rock Band and a few other games. Our sports psych actually looked at it and was like, you guys can't play as many video games because your stress is also too high. You need to relax more on your off time.
We're jumping ahead 7 years. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually just narrowly missed the Olympics in 2002 in Salt Lake City. So then I had to wait another 4 years for my next shot at Torino in 2006. And I was fortunate enough to make the team. I was actually ranked #1 in the world at the time, so that helped. So it was a pretty long process to get from World Cup to actually get onto the Olympic team. And then I also got to compete in 2010 at the Vancouver Olympics.
Were you confident you would make the Olympics?
There was no guarantees of qualifying. That's almost the most stressful part is trying to qualify for the Olympics. Once you get on the Olympic team, you can almost breathe a sigh of relief, at least for a few days. And then you're okay, now I got to get ready for the Olympics. Leading up into Vancouver was obviously crazy intense because there was so much more media focus because it was within Canada as well.
Do you want to talk about Vancouver, competing in Vancouver then?
Walking into opening ceremony was just once in a lifetime experience, just insane. I'm finally going to the Olympics in Canada, which was just such a cool thing. Like I was so excited and just like geared up for it. It was really cool. Retiring was on the radar after Vancouver, but it was like, we'll see how it goes and how I feel. Cause you kind of never know until after the event. And when you have like some space and time to yourself to be like, how do I feel about this? Do I want to keep going?
3, 2, 1, clock is running.
Competing on home soil, in aerials was amazing. I ended up coming 5th, which was like not exactly what I was hoping for, but it was still a pretty good showing. And I was really proud of all the work I put in and stuff. So it was by far one of the coolest things I've ever done. In my career, I think I had 13 World Cup medals, 2 wins and then bronzes and silvers. So I was finished overall 2nd one year. That was probably the highest, like my World Cup ranking for a season. So after the Olympics, I kind of took a hard look at it and just decided it was time to retire.
The transition out of training full-time into, school.
As a mature student, going back to school at like 31 was interesting. It was like a computer science dinner. And I posted a picture of all of us together on Facebook, and one of my friends was like, what were you, the chaperone at this thing? Look at all these kids. I actually couldn't even get into the Faculty of Computer Science because my GPA was so bad from when I had dropped out when I was 19. I had like a 1.6 GPA, but I ended up graduating with honors, so it worked out.
Let's talk about the games course.
The University of Calgary had like a games design concentration in their computer science program. I was like, cool, I'll do that for fun, but I didn't think it would actually, much would come of it. It was by far one of the best experiences I had at school. It had its challenges. You had good teammates.
We had great teammates.
Yeah.
You had terrible.
I had terrible teammates, yeah.
Did you have, were multiple of you?
No, I just had one bad teammate, yeah. But I kind of got slotted in with one guy who was a bit of a challenge to work with, we'll say. Like in the last 2 weeks, he decided that he wasn't that focused on games anymore and was like, well, you guys can, deal with the rest. It was my first experience with crunch, I guess you could say. I met a few people, met Steven, and we decided after graduating to kind of work on this little side project, which eventually became Disjoint, this like mobile game we made, all about rotating triangles and getting them into the right configurations. And a friend of mine called me up and was like, hey man, do you want to do some coaching for a season? And I was like, yeah, sure, perfect, let's go. So I ended up coaching the Australian ski team for a year. And during that time, I was still trying to work on Disjoint, but it was even harder because I was like stranded in the middle of nowhere with like shoddy Wi-Fi half the time. And it's supposed to be like a quick little, hey, let's slap together a mobile game kind of thing. And then it took us almost 4 years to finally complete and get out the door. That was kind of the transition to like actually getting into full-time game dev as a career. And that's kind of how Isto was born. And then we started Atrio. I'm at Isto, I'm head of IT operations for the entire company, which is 2-person or now a 3-person team.
We just give ourselves names.
Yeah. Steve does most of the artwork, but he also does some of the programming as well, but I usually try to architect everything and kind of take the lead on all that stuff. It's been, a 4-year project that's been something we've grown tremendously as a studio working on. I look at all the years I spent playing video games stranded on some mountain, and now I take those like game design lessons that I learned from playing those games and actually get to apply them in the game we're making now, so yeah.
Any advice you would give to young developers who are also pursuing a career in aerial skiing?